Hi, I'm Tim, co-founder at Dataro, where we're using AI to create better performing fundraising campaigns. I think a big problem in fundraising today is that it's actually based on what donors have done in the past, not what they're likely to do in the future. Thanks to advancements in AI, we can now understand each donor's specific and unique donor journey and make accurate predictions about what they're likely to do next. Imagine if you knew a donor wanted to churn or cancel their recurring gift, or was likely to give a major gift in the future. Does that sound like science fiction? Well, it's not. Dataro has already created AI software to do just that. If you'd like to know more, come along to my pitch and I'll show you just how it's done. I hope to see you there.
Welcome, everybody. So I'm Audrey from MSF in Ireland, and I'm just here as kind of to moderate and make sure the questions are presented to Tim. Tim from Dataro is going to talk about his innovative idea on how to change fundraising for all of us. So I think it's something that will be really, really interesting. I'm not going to talk too much more and let Tim talk about his idea and how it might change fundraising for all of us. So over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Flavia. Let me flip over my screen now and we'll dive in. Audrey, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that all right?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Here we go. So thanks for joining. My name's Tim. I'm the co-founder of Dataro, where we use artificial intelligence to create better performing fundraising campaigns. So fundraising is all about having really good relationships with our donors. And ideally, it would look something like this, a one-to-one relationship between the fundraiser and the donor. But we know fundraisers are short on time and have huge donor databases. So in reality, it looks a lot more like this. The fundraiser or one fundraiser trying to manage and have relationships with hundreds, thousands, or even millions of donors. And the problem with this is that the donors feel left out and ignored and lose touch with the charity's mission. And the fundraisers feel frustrated that they don't know which donors to talk to and frustrated that their campaigns aren't getting the returns that they want. Wouldn't it be great if fundraisers knew exactly who they should be talking to and exactly what those donors wanted next? Dataro is AI software that predicts what each donor will do next. Sounds simple, but think of the possibilities. Imagine knowing which donors were likely to give to the next appeal, or give a major gift in the future, or even churn, read an email, or open that letter. You could then reach out at the right time with the right message, increasing engagement, increasing returns, and nurturing those relationships. And this is what it looks like. Dataro's technology provides a predictive score for every donor in your database. Here we can see the donors on the top left that are likely to churn. They're unhappy and likely to churn. Others who are likely to give to an appeal, others likely to be a major giver, or others simply just likely to read an email. This makes the job of the fundraiser much easier. They know who to contact, they just need to do the messaging. If they want to reduce churn, they can contact those likely to churn. They have the power to increase giving, to nurture those major givers, or increase engagement. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and there are many more predictions that we can do. The key to this process is in the data. We take on board all the data of the donor's journey, from acquisition and the way they're acquired, to the programs that they give to the emails that they open, and many more. The key is using all the data inside your CRM. And once we've done that, it's all about an AI technique called machine learning. And machine learning is great at picking out patterns in data. Can you see the pattern in this donor journey? It looks like they're incredibly likely to give in the next appeal at Christmas. So if I was a fundraiser, I'd be reaching out now with a Christmas card. The important part of this process is that it's entirely automated. Dataro software handles all the data movement, the validation and cleaning, the model building, and the generating of the predictions so that the fundraiser can focus on what they do best, nurturing the relationship with those donors. It's been 2 years since we had this idea, and already we've worked with 40 nonprofits across Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. In that time, we've generated over 1 billion donor predictions, and those predictions have been used to target over 1 million donors in different fundraising campaigns. Fundraisers who have already used this technology have found that they're raising more money in their appeals. They're getting more gifts and more retention, more upgrades, more reactivations, and they're saving time in the process. What's amazing about this is that there's no need to wait and the software already exists. If you're on Blackboard or Salesforce, you can head to our website and sign up. In a couple of days, you'll have AI predictive donor scores in your system for any of the supported predictions that you see on the screen. You can also use that software to define the optimum size of a fundraising campaign or analyze the results of previous fundraising efforts. We're really excited by this software, and if you are too, you can actually go to our website today and sign up for a free demo. Our mission is to provide AI donor predictions to all fundraisers, from the smallest art gallery to the largest multinational charity. But to do this, we need your help. We need the help of fundraisers who want to take the next step, fundraisers who can answer the question, what would I do if I knew what my donors were going to do next? We think this is just the start of using AI for fundraising, and we're really excited to work with fundraisers around the globe that can help us improve this technology and start talking to their donors more like individuals and nurturing the right relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm just wondering, does anybody have any questions? I know I have a couple. Well, maybe I'll start with my question. Tim, how did you come up with this idea? And like you said that it's been 2 years in the making, but it was probably a couple of years before that you started thinking about it.
Yes, very much so. So I think the idea came out of working with a number of charities. We were pretty lucky early on to have kind of Greenpeace as a founding foundational partner. And we learned very quickly that the best things we can do for them is targeting how they speak to their donors, which we think in places such as DM appeals or recurring giving programs just wasn't done very effectively. My background was in machine learning and data science, so it was a natural fit to use these techniques to solve the problem. And in Greenpeace's cases, it was kind of simple in a way. They were sending far too much mail, wasting that resource and spending too much money and not getting the right returns. So a technique like machine learning and these AI predictions actually mean now they're sending far fewer mail, so that they're saving a lot of money and saving resources there, and actually getting a much bigger return. And that was probably the first thing we did a couple of years ago. And then we said, okay, this is great. Let's start automating this, make it better, make it faster, and get it out there to all charities.
And what kind of integrations required? You said the software can work already with Blackboard and Salesforce. Are there many costs involved to integrate it into your Blackboard system or Salesforce system?
Yeah, so integration is fairly simple. One of the reasons why this technology can be applied these days is because these bigger CRMs like Salesforce and Blackboard have APIs, which mean we can move data around really quickly. So that's a really important part. So it means the integration is not too clunky. We're not asking for big files and extracts and upload them on our website. It's a matter of giving us access, and we go in and take the data that we need and push back those predictive scores once we've processed all that data. We handle a lot of data privacy, and we don't take out any data that we shouldn't for those reasons. But yeah, the integration is really simple. And like I said, it just takes a couple of days.
It only takes a couple of days. And do you see this software working in the future with other CRMs, Microsoft Dynamics or others that are on the market that are fairly popular?
Yeah, great question. So we're actually working on our Dynamics integration at the moment, but there are
That's what I
many.
wanted to hear, Tim.
Excellent. Well, you might be the first, the pilot Dynamics client. So yeah, definitely, there's the bigger CRMs, but then I think there's many smaller charity specific ones that will kind of roll out over time. But Dynamics is definitely the next integration partner.
Great. Okay, we have a question from Juan, and he said, what are the costs involved? How is the costing structured? And if we wanted to test it, how much would we need to budget?
Good question. So an easy answer to that, you can actually go on our website and see most of our pricing that's there. It's based on the size organizations, but the starting price for small organizations might only be $299 a month. And it kind of goes up from there. It also depends on how many predictions you want. So if you're interested in predicting who's going to give an appeal gift, or who's going to give a major gift, or a gift in will, or churn, or upgrade or activate, they're all part of different modules that we have. So you might want 1 or 2 or 3 modules, and that changes the pricing as well. But typically most of our clients now are on annual or monthly contracts, and it's just recurring, that classic kind of software model.
Okay, and would you have to sign up for a 12-month contract, or?
Not necessarily. Most people do, because it absorbs the cost of the integration. So the integration becomes free if you sign up for long enough.
Yeah.
If you want to do a smaller test, we'd probably talk pricing that way.
Okay, great. We have another question here from Anne, and she said, hey, I would like to understand better how you build your knowledge on people's next moves.
Good question. And luckily, I have my CTO sitting over here who can give a little more technical rundown. Jump on in, Dave. This is Dave, CTO and co-founder of Dataro.
How's it going? I've just come from our company Christmas party, so I'm wearing my Christmas party shirt. But yeah, basically, I mean, I think the key of it is people are pretty familiar with sort of RFV, RFM kind of models, where you're looking at people's recency, frequency, and putting them into groups, and you're kind of weighting those groups and that kind of thing. Well, machine learning is just a really incredibly sophisticated version of doing that, where instead of there being 3 different factors, there's hundreds of factors. And instead of sort of guessing or calculating based on previous performance, how those go, there's a very sophisticated algorithm to kind of weight all those things in combination. So basically, it's just a really supercharged way of looking at the historical performance of different behaviors and predicting what people will do. Yeah, I think that's it. It's hard to explain, but I think that's a good start. Yeah.
That's great. And is there a minimum size of database that that you need to deal with, and I suppose market size? I suppose I'm probably thinking quite selfishly. I am in a small market in Ireland, but this is something that's really interesting.
Yeah, so I'd probably say that the minimum for us at the moment is probably around 50,000 donors.
50,000 records, I guess, total. They don't have to be active. But,
just
in the database.
Yeah. And it also depends what exactly you're trying to predict. But that's probably the floor for us at the moment. We're trying to make that, bring that down lower, but it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. And one of the perils of most of the organizations we've worked with have been quite large. And one of the things we're really looking for out of this is to work with much smaller organizations, so we can gather the data and the experience working with that kind of really small sub 50,000. But a lot of our clients are 50,000 or up to 5 million kind of record sizes.
Okay. And I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. Is there anything that you haven't been able to cover off in the presentation there? Because it was, 5 minutes is quite a short time to talk about your life's work, or the last 2 years of your life.
Very much so. I think we could probably throw a couple more things in. I think Juan asked about doing a test. So pretty much when we roll out the software, there are ways, very easily in our software to both use the predictions and then get the results. So when I talked about what we currently offer, not only do you get those predictive scores, but you also get a way of looking at the results afterwards. And pretty much when we first released, these predictive scores, everyone said, well, how did they go? So the first feature that we released after that was an automatic analyzer of those campaigns. So anyone who comes on board, you automatically get to see how those campaigns went, kind of what was the ROI, what was the response rate, did Dataro help that? So I think that's one thing to point out. So, when we think about tests, it's something that's kind of inbuilt into the product, actually seeing how those campaigns went. So I think that's worthy of mentioning. What else?
I mean, I don't know. I just point out that it's kind of interesting to us. We've been working in that, like you said, this has been our life for 2 years, 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, 3 of the top 10 ideas that have made it through to the final, so this reimagining fundraising thing, are about this AI using fundraising. Like, we know it works. Like, I think it's just really now it's a game of how can you roll it out as quickly and as cheaply as possible in a reliable fashion. I think we've pretty much put that in place. The difficult thing is not so much the AI, it's the engineering around that, integrating with all those systems, making it reliable, making it so it runs autonomously. I think that's kind of where people need to be sort of looking at, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we spent the first couple of years, just trying to learn and really do this in lots of different ways and, manually work with clients and lots of emails and Excel files getting moved around. And we think the only way to do this properly, where there's no mistakes and you kind of are starting to guarantee better results, is like what Dave's saying, where it's all automated, there's a lot more trust and you can get a lot more value. And the machine learning part can just get better and better. I should point out I've known Dave since high school and he's quite humble, but he's kind of the man who's built all these things. And they're really quite impressive. That automation, that AI and machine learning is really good.
Great. I have another question here from Lisa. Does the software feed into NDP projects or potential new trends that charities may see, such as young donors coming through at a particular time of year, or using data from the industry to suggest newer products that charities can offer?
Interesting. Do you know what MPD means?
I'm not sure what MPD is.
I would say new product development.
Okay.
That's interesting. So a lot.
Yes, new product development. Lisa's just confirmed that.
I guess in terms of the first part of that question, looking at new trends coming through. So, for instance, you launch a new fundraising program or you pick up a new segment that wasn't previously there. How do the models kind of adapt to that? I mean, that's kind of the advantage of the machine learning, because the models are able to learn from things that are happening in the data. If you've got segments and you have them in your head and you know what's what, when things are actually changing in the data, that's not going to change what's in your mind. But the algorithms are kind of agnostic to that. So when the data changes, you suddenly get an influx of new donors who start having this new behavior, the algorithms will learn and adapt to that. So in a way, it's a lot more powerful than what you can do yourself.
Yeah, COVID. So our models were still showing high accuracy after COVID, even though everyone was behaving in a different way.
So it was able to keep on top of there was higher churn rates in regular giving programs, but the models were able to kind of keep step with that. So
that was a really good validation, because we didn't even know what would happen.
The black swan event.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really cool.
Yeah, because it was an unusual year this year, And
I think in terms of, it might not be new product development, but in terms of when we work with clients, almost always they haven't run certain types of fundraising campaigns before, particularly around things like recurring giving churn. People previously haven't been able to proactively tackle this issue of churn. Normally people wait till after it's done, and then with this technology we can say, hey, these people are going to leave, you should do something about it. And we've found some really good approaches, some particular phone call campaigns that actually prevent churn, and we've shown that in experiments.
Okay.
So very frequently when people come on board, they say, hey, what's the best way to use this? And we might suggest entirely new fundraising campaigns, and then kind of help them deploy that, because they couldn't do it before they had this technology.
Yeah. We have another question from Louisa again, and she said, "I'd like to know if it's a multicultural tool. You know, as you know, the way in which donors act in South America can be different to Australia, and so on. So, you know, is the predictability adaptable?"
Sure. Yeah. So I think this is the thing as well. Like, sort of until people started using machine learning for these kind of things, you kind of had people who were like experts in fundraising, and had worked in fundraising for 20, 30 years, and they sort of knew how it worked, but they were intrinsically locked into the environment which they came from. So they probably knew a lot about Australia, but it didn't necessarily apply to UK, USA. Machine learning is, again, like totally agnostic to these assumptions. It'll look at the data of what's happened in that environment, and it will learn the trends. So when we learn a model, it's learning exactly on that organization at that period of time in that place. So the models are all different. Like even the ones in Australia, like the one for one particular organization and another organization, like very different models. So the model will learn whatever the trend is in the environment. So
definitely.
It'll learn from the data regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't have any assumptions around what should be or what people assume.
Yeah, that won't work here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
exactly.
like, this is what has happened. This is the pattern. This is the trend.
Very much so. And I'm like, as a data scientist, I'm really fascinated to look into that. How do behaviors differ around the world? But like Dave said, those models are so robust to those changes. And we've already done, we've done experiments where we've rolled out predictions in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong, or globally with the multinational charity.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be any large differences across there. The predictions are definitely different. The models are different, but the underlying technology is still the same, and it works.
So for those attending, I'm Audrey from MSF in Ireland. I'm head of fundraising here for the last 5 years. I became involved in this reimagining fundraising through our international office and collaborating with UNICEF and other international organizations. As fundraisers, obviously, we want to look at new ways or better fundraising and how we can improve things and be, optimize our return on investment and talk to the right donors. So Tim and Dave from Dataro are going to talk to us about their idea. Well, I suppose it's not their idea, it's their proven concept using AI to support and improve our fundraising. So over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Audrey. You're an expert now after listening to the first pitch. Today, so I'm Tim, and I'm a co-founder at Dataro, where we're using AI to create better performing fundraising campaigns. So fundraising is all about having great relationships with your donors. And ideally, it looks something like this: a one-to-one relationship between the fundraiser and the donor. But we know fundraisers are short on time and resources and have huge donor databases. So in reality, that relationship looks a lot more like this, with one fundraiser having to manage relationships with hundreds, thousands, or even millions of donors. And the problem with this is that the donors begin to feel neglected and ignored and lose touch with the charity. Fundraisers, on the other hand, become frustrated because they don't know which donors they should be talking to engage with, and frustrated that their campaigns are not getting the best return possible. Wouldn't it be great if fundraisers knew exactly which donors they should be engaging with to get the best fundraising returns? Dataro is AI software that predicts what each donor will do next. Sounds simple? Well, think of the possibilities. Imagine if you knew exactly which donors were likely to give a gift in the next appeal, or go on to give a major gift in the coming year, or even churn or cancel their recurring giving subscription. You could reach out at just the right time with just the right message to engage with those donors and to work on that relationship and get those gifts. And this is what the technology looks like. Dataro provides predictions for all these propensities for all these fundraising efforts. On the left here, we see that some donors are unhappy and are 97% likely to churn. Other donors are likely to give to an appeal, or likely to be a major giver, or even just likely to read and open an email. If you're a fundraiser, your job becomes much simpler then. If you want to reduce churn, you can pick up the phone and target those donors likely to churn. If you want to increase engagement and gifts in your appeal, then you can target those donors. If you want to get more major givers, you can roll out the red carpet and nurture those individuals most likely to give a major gift. This is just the tip of the iceberg of some of the predictions that we can already provide. There are many, many more. The key to this process is the data, and it's the data in your CRM. We are taking into account every bit of information about your donors across the entire donor journey. Here's one example of that, where we can see a donor who has given to peer-to-peer fundraising events. They've opened emails, they've been acquired via website. Pretty much any bit of data you know about them that's in your CRM can be used for this process. And where the magic is in a technique called machine learning, which is what people say is AI. And the machine learning is a technique that is incredibly good at picking out patterns. The more patterns you can pick out, the better those predictions. Can you see the pattern here? It looks like this donor is incredibly likely to give now at Christmas time. So if I was a fundraiser, I'd be reaching out with a Christmas card right about now. The important part of this process is that it's entirely automated. Dataro handles the movement of data, the cleaning and validation, and the generation of reliable predictions. The fundraiser doesn't have to worry about any of this. They can just work on doing what they do best, which is running great fundraising campaigns and nurturing those relationships with the donors. We've had this idea 2 years ago, and since then, we've worked with 40 nonprofits across Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. We've generated over 1 billion donor predictions, and those predictions have been used to target over 1 million donors in different fundraising campaigns. Fundraisers who have run those campaigns have found that they've received more appeal gifts. They have greater retention, more upgrades, more reactivations, and above all, they actually save time as well. The great thing about this software is that it's already available and you don't have to wait. If you're a fundraiser on Blackboard or Salesforce, then you can go to our website and sign up. In a couple of days, you'll have these AI predictive scores ready to go for all the predictions and all the fundraising efforts you see on the right of the screen. What's more, you can use our software to figure out the optimum size of a fundraising campaign or analyze the results of previous fundraising efforts. We're really excited by this, and if you are too, you can go to our website and actually sign up for a free demo today. Our mission is to provide AI donor predictions to all fundraisers, whether they're in the smallest of art galleries or the largest of multinational charities. But we need your help. To do this, we're looking for fundraisers who want to take the next step. Fundraisers who can answer the question of what would you do if you knew what your donors were going to do next? We're really excited to join more fundraisers from around the globe in deploying AI predictive scores and having more one-to-one relationships with their donors. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tim. It's my second time listening to it, and it was equally interesting. So we already have a question from Jason, and he said, how large of a donor data set does Dataro need to create these models and segments?
Yeah, good question. So our running minimum size is around 50,000 records in the entire donor database that you've ever had. But one of the key goals of Dataro in the coming year is to really reduce that. And that's why we're looking for more fundraisers. We've kind of been a victim of our own success in dealing with some of the larger charities so far. But we really want to reach out and talk to more fundraisers at those really small organizations below 50,000 and actually start delivering predictions to them. But that's kind of off the cuff, depending on the kind of predictions that you're after as well.
Sure. And you were saying that the software can currently integrate with Blackboard products and Salesforce. Are there plans to integrate with other CRM products such as Dynamics or any of the other popular ones?
Absolutely. Dynamics is definitely next in our sites, and we're currently starting to build that integration. So then we kind of covered the big boys of the CRMs, and I should be specific. That includes, Blackboard, Razor's Edge, NXT, CRM, and Salesforce Nonprofit Success Pack as well.
Great. And another question, like we know that donors in South America will act differently to donors in Australia. Does this tool help with that predictability? We're not treating all donors exactly the same. I know there are huge differences between donors in Ireland and the UK and that.
Also a very good question. And I think my co-founder Dave answered that very well last time. So I'm going to bring him in. This is Dave, my co-founder and CTO.
Great question. So I think the key thing to kind of understand about what we're doing, which might be different to kind of approaches that have been done in the past, I guess historically people have been kind of, experts in their sort of field. And they've sort of known what works based on their experience in a particular, market or environment. But that doesn't necessarily translate well elsewhere. Machine learning kind of takes away that approach, and it has really no assumptions about what works. It really just looks at the data and figures out what the trends are and that kind of thing. So we train a model for like every specific prediction for every specific organization, and the models are always different. Even within Australia, within like what we would consider to be relatively similar organizations, the models themselves are quite different. So the model is really specific to that thing. So definitely it would work in different markets, and we've shown that it works, in the UK and New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah, very much so.
Which are all quite different markets. And what are the costs involved? Is there a cost structure depending on the size of the organization or the amount of data? And if people want to test, what kind of budget do they need to put aside?
Easiest way to answer that is you can head to our website and see a pricing guide. Essentially, it scales with the size of the organization. So if you're in that 50,000 or below bracket, or you're in the, the mega million size as well. It also depends on how many modules you want. So if you're particularly interested in converting people to regular giving, that's one. If you're interested in appeals, that's another. If you're interested in something like the mid-value program or a major giving request program, that would be another one as well. But if you're in the smaller tier, you can get started for $299 a month. And there's no integration fees or setup costs if you book that on an annual basis.
Great. So another question that's come up is, how do you build your knowledge on people's next moves? Because I think as fundraisers, we have a habit of looking at people's past moves and past behaviors. How do we predict the future?
Yeah, sure. So again, this comes back to how machine learning is probably a different approach to what people have done historically. I guess an easy way to think about machine learning is, I think most people are really familiar with RFE or RFM, which kind of has three factors. So how recently has someone given, how much have they given, and how often do they give? Well, machine learning is a way to kind of take in a lot more factors automatically and figure out which ones are important. So, not only can we figure out, how much they've given, but like how much have they given to an appeal? How much do they give to regular giving? How much do they do peer-to-peer? How much have they done in the last 12 months? Like we actually generate over 400 factors that take into account, giving, communications, individual ideas about the person. So how old they are, the demographics and that kind of thing. And the model will just look through the whole history of data at the behaviors that people have had with those factors and figure out what's important and in what combination. So by looking at the whole history of the data in the past, we can actually predict what's going to happen in the future and be relatively certain about how likely certain things are.
I think
and like this year was an extraordinary year, and you used the software for some of your clients. So how successful was it?
This year, yes, was an extraordinary year. So we had no idea how these models would go, when COVID hit. We're making a lot of predictions. How are they going to stand up against this entirely new world where there's a lot more churn and, people aren't answering the phone like they used to. And we were, really surprised that the models are so adaptable and versatile that we're getting the same prediction accuracy during COVID that we were getting before it. And just like Dave said, it's due to the fact that those models are so adjustable to new data. So new data comes in and they learn those patterns and the predictions get updated. So they stayed accurate even through COVID, which was really great to see.
Which is amazing. It really is. So I have another question here. Does the software feed into new product development projects or potential new trends that charities may see, younger donors coming through at particular times of the year or using data from industry to suggest newer products that charities can offer?
I think not insofar as new products, but I was going to pick up on this before. The biggest difference between kind of the old way of looking at the past versus the new way of looking forward and getting predictions is that you can actually run entirely new fundraising campaigns as well. So previously, it was really impossible to know who was going to churn or cancel or leave the organization as a donor. That just wasn't a way that people thought about it. It was more retrospective. It was waiting till someone churned and then back in, reactivate them, for instance. And that was a pretty common campaign. But now with predictions, we're rolling out to a lot of our organizations an entirely new way of thinking about fundraising. And I think reducing churn or reducing attrition is a really good example of this. No one was trying to proactively reduce churn previously. But if you know a donor is 95%, like that example in the pitch, if you know someone's 95% likely to churn, we have ways and we've run programs where you can pick up the phone and actually reduce that churn rate. So I think actually providing new ways of doing fundraising is one of the really good benefits of this predictive approach.
Yeah, and I think it's something we all need to embrace going forward. I think we're at our time there, gentlemen, and so I understand that we have to go back to the live stream, which is reimaginingfundraising.org. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and listening to you, and thanks to everyone for listening as well. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.